there's this real sense of unworthiness, of shame, embarrassment. What will my life ever amount to? Like, that was one of the biggest feelings I had of like, oh, I've wrecked it all, God, I'm so sorry. You gave me this beautiful thing and I've wrecked it. Like, I've totally wrecked it.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Oakes and welcome to Finding the Light. My guest today is Captain Hana Seddon. Hana is the Corps officer from the Salvation Army in Rotorua, and she's got a fascinating story of being brought up as a Christian and then, like many of us in her teens, stepped away to do her own thing, only to reach rock bottom and come back to God. What I'm interested in exploring with Hana today is not only that coming back to God, her journey, some of her life story, but actually how God led her in her identity to reclaim and to discover her identity as a Māori woman.
My mother and father, they were together for about 6 years, but I was born at the end of that. I saw him when I was younger, but then I didn't see him again for many years. I didn't see him again until I was 8.
Right.
And 14.
Yeah.
Which is tough because, you know, like, you're growing up in this world, which for me was a very Pākehā world, and you know you're Māori, but where is your point of reference? Where is your safe place to explore that and see what that looks like? So that was a bit tough too. Even I didn't know the words around it until much later. I just knew I didn't quite fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can identify with that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, because when I was 4, my dad left. And I can remember even being at school and kids would talk about things that they'd done on the weekend. They'd talk about their mum and their dad. And I'd be like, oh, they're just weird.
Yeah,
like, that's
weirdos.
the way I sort of got through it for myself, that they were all they were all a bit strange.
Yeah.
So I can actually really identify with that. It's a, like you say, at the time, you don't necessarily have the language or understanding. It's just the sense that something quite major in your life is missing, right?
That's exactly right. And so I really felt for my mum. And when I look back, more so, because, you know, she had this ideal of what she wanted in her life, and she always wanted to be married and raise children. That was her calling. Yeah. I think she felt a bit ripped off. Yeah. Because in the end, she ended up raising 3 children to 2 different dads. But I think the one thing that was really important was that she loved Jesus. She loved Jesus. She actually grew up in an Irish Catholic family. But when she was 8, she had this cool experience and became what you'd call a born-again Christian, spirit-filled Christian, and things changed. We started going to this happy, clappy church with pretty cool music, funky music. And people, I don't know, they seemed to have like a relationship with the Creator. And so that was weird and new. With this whole God thing, I thought, oh, maybe there's something in it. Yeah. And so when I was 11, I went to a kids camp and they were singing this old 80s tune, I believe in Jesus. I don't know if you remember that song. I believe he is the Son of God. And I was sitting there thinking, well, can I sing this? Because do I believe that? Do I believe that? And by the end of that camp, I had an experience that made me think, yeah, man, I believe this. Like, cool. 11 years old. At the time, you feel like you're, 30. Yeah. Because you're so wise, and making decisions for your whole life. So I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 11, got baptised at 12, really special occasion. So I invited all my friends and my family. I invited my dad and my stepdad, and not everybody turned up that day. And so you've got this mixture of this amazing experience where you're like, whoa, I think I've found the meaning of life, and like someone who fully loves me and accepts me and chooses me and wants me. And then others who you kind of think should, but they didn't, and they don't turn up. So in my life, I would say that I've really appreciated the aspect of God that is Father. Like, I love it. It's such a, oh, I think I'm going to cry. Did we bring tissues? Or do I bring any tissues? I love the aspect of God that is Father.
Yeah.
Because then I'm his responsibility.
Yeah.
And I have a freedom in approaching him, going to him with all sorts of stuff. And I know that he will look out for me because he knows I don't have what maybe other people have had.
Start sort of filling up the gaps in your heart, right?
Yeah, and I think it was a journey to get there because you don't know that at 12.
No.
And 13, maybe theoretically, yeah, that sounds good. God is my Father. But it wasn't really until later, like my late 20s, that it clicked for me. But there's a lot of years between 12 and 27.
So there was a time there you decided, oh, this isn't quite for me, this God thing. Is that kind of how it worked? I mean, I hit 16 and I was like, I'm out of here.
It's more the church wasn't really my thing.
Yeah, well, me too.
Oh, yeah, cool.
But then that kind of led to
other
things.
I love the Lord. I always loved God. And then as I got older, I saw all these other things going on around me that, you know, like, oh, that's interesting. And, oh, people are doing that. Oh, that looks exciting. And you kind of like, part of your growing up is trying things out. And I remember still the first time I had a smoke outside church at the back there and like, oh, this is naughty. I look back to what I was thinking and I just wanted excitement and fun, and I'm the kind of person who enjoys people and, you know, having a good time and, just the energy of being around a whole lot of people. And so I can see why I started to walk in the direction I did. I think this desire to fit in, there was still a part of me, a very broken part of me that wanted to be accepted. So this was really about acceptance. And there's all these social pressures that go on when you're that age and you want to be accepted. So I started kind of crossing the line more and more and more from where I had always thought I would be through to a place I never thought I would be. And by the age of 15, while I loved God, I just sort of said to him, low key, if you wouldn't mind just turning around over there and not looking, because I don't think you're going to like what you're going to see. I still love you, but I just want to go and see what's happening over here. I'll be back, you know. And so as if you can do that to God. And while I created that little bit of space for myself to go and explore, I left school at 15. I left home and went and lived in what turned out to be a drug dealer's. Whoops, didn't know that when I first moved in. I started doing stupid things, sniffing glue at a graveyard with friends. Who does that? Yeah, and, you know, boyfriends were not really a long-term thing. I had a whole lot of people who were saying, what are you doing? You're crazy. But then this other group who was like, yeah, let's keep going. This is awesome. And so many times between the age of 15 and 27, I would kind of go back and forth between these two very different worlds where Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. But the attention of this group of people, of this particular guy in the moment, is so powerful to me. I feel so accepted and so seen and so loved that I don't know how to get away from that. And so just for a while, Lord, just for a while, maybe someone here would choose me and maybe someone here might love me. Then I can drag them into the church, like you watch. Never, ever, 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 ever did that ever happen. I remember one lady who I really just so much respect. She became a mentor for me, Denise. And when I was young, doing silly things, people would look at me with really judgmental eyes, like, you know, like, oh, well, we always knew that was going to happen, you know. But she never ever did. And so even when she saw me and I was in the middle of being wild, she would say to me, God, it's got such a wonderful plan for you. I was thinking, oh, yeah, sure he has. And she'd say, I pray for you all the time. I can't wait to see what God's going to do with you. Oh, amazing. I was thinking, where's she getting this from? This is so weird. And she was so right.
So she was speaking life and not judgment, right?
Absolutely. And while young people look like they may not be interested in you speaking life, they desperately need it, especially those who are way out there, the ones who look like they're not interested in church or God or whatever. Because what's behind those kinds of words of life is love, and you're seeking love. That's why we're doing what we're doing. It's because we're looking for love. We're just not looking for it in quite the right place.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 18, I had my first son, yeah. And it was wonderful because he's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful young man. He's nearly 28, which makes me verging on old. Anyway, he's a wonderful young man, but, you know, like his entrance into the world was really, really rocky, whether I would even keep him, whether I would even raise him. It was really rough. And I wonder how much that plays into how he has felt about himself over the years. You know, you can't not be impacted.
Yeah, as a parent, you just end up thinking like that, don't you?
You do, and you feel this massive shame and guilt for decisions that you've made that you cannot unmake because no one else asked for this, right? And then by the time I was 20, I was pregnant with my second child. Again, the same thing of like, oh, what are you doing? And all those questions about whether what to do, really. And the world will tell you a whole lot of things. But in the end, I'm really glad that he is with us, beautiful young man. So both of my children, I raised them by myself over those years. They didn't really have much to do with anyone else. It was me who raised them. And my awesome mum, who was there for me and said, look, it's not ideal, but it's doable.
Yeah,
and
what a good mum.
Yeah, she is. She is. I just think, man, I would never have gotten through if someone hadn't just put their arm around me and said, look, it's not ideal, but we can do this. And sometimes that's all you need to save yourself from doing something that you can never undo, never come back from. And so she was that person for me. And so my two kids, man, it hasn't been easy. There's this thing called teenage years. And they were in some ways even more fun than I was in my teenage years. But they've made it through and they're doing so well. And it's hard to see that, when you're pregnant and alone for the first time and the second time. I think also there's this real sense of deep shame. When you've made decisions or things have happened to you that are not part of the plan that you were thinking of when you were 11 years old, you can live your life for Jesus. There's this real sense of unworthiness, of shame, embarrassment. What will my life ever amount to? Like, that was one of the biggest feelings I had of like, oh, I've wrecked it all, God, I'm so sorry. You gave me this beautiful thing and I've wrecked it. Like, I've totally wrecked it. You told me not to, and then I told you to turn around as if you should be in the naughty corner. It's me who should have been in the naughty corner. Yeah, one night I came back from another all-nighter and I fell down the stairs and I broke my leg, which was pretty painful. And I ended up in a cast and I couldn't walk and therefore I couldn't fly. I couldn't do my job. I worked in a corporate job which involved flying, whilst also being an alcoholic and also raising children. And so I got stuck at home for 8 weeks or something. It was like the first version of lockdown that I've ever experienced. And in the silence and in the no job and in the no noise, it was actually really awful. I felt this pain trying to escape out of every pore and my mind just really racing to try and find ways to cover up this growing disturbance within me that was to do with this realization, I suppose, that I was wildly unhappy and I was way away from what I was meant to be doing. I may have been making a lot of money and looked like I was doing fine, but actually behind the scenes, I was not at all fine. And there was something in me, because I'd given my heart to the Lord all those years ago, there was something in me that just knew there is actually another path for you and this ain't it. The problem was I felt like I was so deeply entrenched and stuck where I was that I actually didn't know how to get out, and I had no creative solutions, no options, no one to call. I just didn't know how to get out of this grind and out of the chains, really. And so for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I prayed and I asked God to remember me and to help me to get out of this place I had put myself. And that if at my old age of 27, there was anything left that I could do with my life, that I would be willing to follow him wherever that took me. Long story short, I ended up leaving my job a week later, or a couple of weeks later, and enrolling in a social work degree at Te Wānanga o Aotearoa, which was a totally new world for me. And so while I was Māori, I didn't know anything about my own world. And so for the first time when I walked into this wānanga, it was unfamiliar yet totally familiar. It was like my DNA, my body, my spirit knew this world and came alive in it.
Right. So
more alive.
And here you sort of felt this resonance, whereas
Absolutely.
maybe in your mind you're like, what's going on?
Whoa, I feel like I'm home, but I've never been here before.
Yeah.
And it was something within the manaakitanga, the waiata, the reo, the way of loving that is uniquely Māori. I just spent, a lot of time sort of healing in that place. It's interesting that God didn't call me back to the church first. He actually called me to there first. And then after a year of crying and searching and studying and being poor as a student, I had to find my first placement. And so I prayed, God, I only want to go where you want me to go. I ain't got time to waste. I'm so old now. I'm 28 now. I ain't got time for this. So show me where you want me to be. And I want to be in a place where I'm really not about, sitting facing the front on a Sunday and then go back to a different world on Monday. Like, I want my whole life to be just all in. I want to do practical things. I want my faith to be lived out in action every day and be useful somewhere, where they don't have someone who's whatever I am. So, yeah, I reached out, and the only place that actually answered me was the Salvation Army. And that was in the end of 2004. The wonderful thing I love about God is that he's a God of restoration. So you may not have had sort of like the straightforward path, but there's still a way to find restoration in other ways. And so going to the wānanga, it opened all of that up for me, and it just gave me the chance to learn how to speak Te Reo Māori. So it's a long journey, and how to sing. Singing in Te Reo Māori, a language that's been in this whenua for 1,000 years, or bringing other people into that space with me when we were singing in Te Reo Māori, so that was kind of exciting. And so part of my cultural, re-indigenisation was to find out the story of my people, our people, and the story of Aotearoa. And I never imagined that I would, over those years, be able to learn and connect the dots in such a way that I would be in a place to teach other people that. That's now one of my most favourite things to do, is actually teach and share and lead workshops so that people have this like, wow, aha moment where they go, okay, I didn't understand that. That makes sense of so much. And primarily church leaders, that's who I spend most of my time sharing those stories with today. And amongst everything else that we've got going on. But I think, I started to learn the history around Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the injustices that came about because of the way that colonisation occurred in this place, in this landscape. It made more sense about what I was seeing on the daily. But I didn't see Māori represented in the leadership of the church and in all of those sorts of places. And I just thought, Lord, how do you feel about this? What do you think about this? You're a covenant God. And so really that's been the sort of flavour of my particular journey of restoration of my culture, is also in alignment with my faith and the things within my faith that call me to justice and that call me to righting wrongs and but doing it in love. Yeah, that's been the journey.
That must be a very rich and full experience, I would imagine.
I think what is so important for me has been seeing the people that I've worked with who might come through to the Bridge program. They're looking for healing, to be freed from addiction, and many of them find Jesus, and then they find their culture again. And there's this amazing kind of awakening that happens, which is a double banger, really. And a lot of those people have gone on to lead in those spaces. It's just so inspiring. And their families have been impacted by the change and the transformation that's happened for them. And when I see that, I'm like, yes, this is all worth it. Woohoo!
Yeah.
And then you start to see that happen right throughout the country. People like me and many, many, many other people that God is walking alongside. When you join all of that up, that becomes a ripple and a flow that is this thing we call revival. You know, that's what that is. And I see the Holy Spirit doing that big time in Aotearoa.
Explain that a bit more to me about revival.
Often people think about the message of the gospel coming to Aotearoa in 1814. But I'm pretty sure God was here before that. You know, the Holy Spirit was already moving, already speaking, and there's lots of different kind of evidence, if you like, that we have of that. But there were some wonderful things that were captured in those conversations and those stories that were had with my people, with our chiefs, which is really the reason why many of them signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi, actually, is because of those relationships with Christian people. And so in those years that followed, there were a huge number of Māori who were Christians. There's a massive history of Christianity in our country. But because of the betrayal and the theft and the loss of so many things that were important, many have pulled away from that, and still today they don't always know the reasons. They just know they're not a fan of the church, not a fan of Pākehā people. So there's real deep hurt there. And I think part of the answer, what God is bringing us back to, is go back and learn your history, know the story, figure out what the breaches of your relationships are with each other, come back to this idea of a covenant, you know, where God was present in that place at that time. And what would it take to begin to honour that again today? And what will happen as you do that, one, by church, by city, by whatever, as we start to do that, the blessings will begin to flow, because it's really about unity, the unity of our people.
And then the blessing flows.
That's right. And God commands a blessing like that's pretty intense. And I think tangata whenua, people of the land, and tangata tiriti, people of the treaty, by virtue of which this is home. You know, we all can be here together, but what we're missing is unity. We actually have these circles where I'm in my circle over here and you're in that circle over there, and we live completely separate lives. Even in the church, that can be the case. Or we might, I have a Māori friend, or I have a Pākehā friend, or whatever. But often we don't do life together because we're very different. We have different worlds. But I wonder what it would look like, and especially if the church can lead this out, is for us to learn how to love one another, you know, and respect and make space for one another, and then build that trust again. Pākehā have forgotten, you know, what their identity is, or New Zealanders or Europeans, or, you know, like different words. But essentially, like, we don't know what our identity is. And I think that's a really awesome place to get to. Once you realise that, some people will be saying this, I feel a little bit threatened because all these Māori, they know exactly where they're from, their marae, da-da-da, and I'm at a loss when I enter into that conversation. They're expecting something from me, and I just want to say, oh, I don't know, we've been here for ages. I'm just from here. I'm just a Kiwi. And that word Kiwi almost sort of like washes away everything that ever was before. But for Māori, we arrived here over 1,000 years ago, many of us, but we will never forget where we came from. Like, you know, there in my heritage, there is connections to Tahiti and to Samoa. And we can't forget that, because that's why the place names that are over there are also the place names in our country. They're connected.
Right.
So what would happen if there was a construction of an identity that helps people to feel at home here, but also connects back to places where people have come from in a meaningful way? I think that gives deeper roots, actually. And when you have a sense of identity, you're not threatened by someone else who has a strong sense of identity.
Yeah, I was just thinking that when you're actually comfortable in your own skin, that sense of being grounded and connected to God, He loves you, then you don't have to be threatened by other people, right? Because you know who you are. You can look in the mirror and recognise yourself.
And then you can stop saying things like, oh, I'm colourblind, I don't see colour. Well, you should, because God made it. Because there's nothing wrong with seeing colour. What you're seeing is the image of God and all these different expressions, people from different places, and You know, everyone's got all sorts of different cultural things that are important to them. Why would you not want to see that? That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We don't need sameness.
Yeah, it'd be boring if you made us all the same.
Totally. Unity is not sameness.
Well, it's been lovely chatting with you today.
Thank you.
I guess just in closing, we've talked about so much. You know, somebody who's on a journey now that's tuned in and listening to us, perhaps it is a journey of identity and just not quite knowing who they are, recognising who they are, don't know where they fit. What would you say to that person?
I would say God loves you so deeply that he loves you enough to help you find that stuff out. And it probably won't happen overnight, but it will happen because it's happening for me and for many, 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 many people, because God hears our hearts and he knows what's important. He doesn't ask us to choose to be Christian over being Māori or being Pākehā or being Irish or whatever. He chooses us. He created us in the form and the fashion and with the ethnicity and the background that we have, and we express our faith through that. And the richness around the throne of God at the end that Revelations talks about, everyone's going to be talking in their different reo with their different haircuts and different dances, and I think that's amazing. And why do we have to wait until that time to be able to do that? Like, we should be working on that now. What does it look like now
Let's have a rehearsal.
Yeah, let's have a rehearsal. I'm down for that. So I would say, it's okay to accept the fact that you're at this place now, but do not give up hope that God will take you far further than you ever imagined that you would go.
A bit of Amazing Grace, I thought.
Oh, I love a bit of Amazing Grace.
And then you could sing some in Te Reo Māori if you wanted to.
Cool.
Here we go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Beautiful. Let me give you a hug. What a great catch-up I had with Hana today. I had a feeling it was going to be a good conversation, and I didn't realise actually how much we had in common, and that whole thing of being away from God and yet not being able to get God out of our system, and people around us are recognising that one day we'd be heading true north again and reconnecting. But I think for Hana, her story's so beautiful in the sense that that God led her to connect with her identity as a Māori woman. And the fact is, we're all made in the image of God, and for all of us, I believe God's got something for us to explore, to go deeper into the way He's created us to be and our representation of Him upon the earth. See you next time on Finding the Light.